I don't know why that was funny.
Hello, and welcome to the Metagame with Adam and James. TheEndStep.com. Why am I doing this?
That's my turn.
I was waiting for you to start.
Ready?
All right, well, that's all staying in.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. What do you guys think of my mohawk? You like it? Let me get a side shot.
You get a flat spot.
I know. I know. I'm sensitive about it. I know how you feel now. All right.
All right.
Welcome to the Metagame.
Where we talk about the metagame.
Yay, the Metagame.
So basically, this is going to take place at the beginning of Theros Standard.
Yes.
So we have a couple weeks to kind of explore the format. It's already growing and changing dramatically. We just had the Pro Tour, just finished up the other day. So we have some more results from that. So basically, we're going to start off in Star City, Worcester.
Yes.
Which is, in our home state. And it was won by Mono Red Aggro.
Yes, week one of a new standard format was won by Mono Red Aggro. I believe that's happened the last
Big surprise.
3 years in a row.
If there's enough critical mass of red cards, always Mono Red's a good deck right away because it puts pressure on your opponent. The format's very undeveloped, and it's a straightforward deck and has a short clock. So
it's a very good way to tackle a brand new format that you're unsure of what works. It's just to be as fast and aggressive as possible. So if anyone is trying mid-rangey strategies or controller strategies, might not be prepared for it.
Right.
Did you end up going to this tournament?
I didn't. I could have. I just didn't go.
All right. There you go.
Yeah. So the rest of the top 8 was a lot of control, which was a little surprising that there was so much control right out of the gate.
Yes.
They were basically in the flavors of blue, white, and Esper. And then there was a green-red monsters deck, which is kind of just like green-red mid-range deck.
Yeah.
Ramps into big guys.
What I was going to say is this was like week one, and a lot of people weren't particularly happy with the results of week one because it looked very much like the old standard.
Right.
And I would say it looked more like block because when we had the block RTR Pro Tour, it was like all Esper everywhere.
Yeah.
And everyone just like pretty much ported that stuff over and added some Theros cards for week one, which is usually what happens. But everyone was like very like this still looks a lot like old standard. Right. There's Esper all over the place.
So week one was somewhat unexciting, but some changes happened pretty quickly.
We'll get to them, yes.
As formats tend to change. We do take a quick break from standard to hit the one modern GP that happened in this time frame. It was won by robots, which is surprising.
What was his name again?
Justin
Robb.
Yeah, Justin Robb. Which I generally do like robots. It's like similar to red deck in standard. It's just like the very most aggressive deck. It's proactive. It has some disruption elements to it. But it's just basically putting a super fast clock on your opponent. And, either they die or they are able to stabilize. But it was an interesting top 8 because we've seen modern dominated by Jund and Melirpod and stuff like that. And the top 8 had 2 robots, 2 red-green Earthatron decks.
Yes, red-green Tron decks.
So,
and there was still Jund.
There was still Jund, obviously, but it wasn't as prevalent or oppressive as people have complained about.
Was it Jund or yes, it was Jund.
Mm-hmm.
Not just the green black.
Correct.
Alternative. No, there was one green black.
Okay.
Flashing white for lingering souls. Yep.
Okay. So back to standard. This one by white-green aggro, which I thought was the best deck out of the gate. It presented beefy threats, resilient threats, flash threats with Advent of the Worm and Boon Satyr and stuff like that. And then you were able to play stuff that counters Wrath effects, which is obviously green-white's usually biggest weakness is Wrath God, but you're able to run what's the indestructible
Rootborn defenses.
Rootborn defenses.
Rootbound defenses.
Yeah,
rootbound. No, it's Rootborn.
It's Rootborn.
I was saying it's Rootborn, not Rootbound.
Okay. Rootborn.
Yes.
Okay.
Everyone says Rootbound, and it's a little annoying.
Very good. As an aside, Doran is shaping up nicely.
Yes,
He shaped up too nicely, and he actually like kind of fell over.
his roots are born.
So then he had to like be trimmed, but he's still doing well.
He is not indestructible this turn.
No, definitely not.
I think it's nice. It's one thing that's really worth noting is week 2. There isn't a single control deck.
Yeah, there's no blue cards in the whole top 8.
Right, and the deck playing main deck, I believe it was main deck, right? Rootborn Defenses.
Yeah.
Won the tournament.
This white-green deck was playing main deck, Rootborn Defenses, and main deck Unflinching Courage.
Yes, so it like hedged both against Esper and Mono Red. And then there was a single control deck in the top 8.
Right.
So that's how quickly the format shifted and adapted to the previous week's results.
Yeah. It's funny that like 1 week was like the mid-range shift like happened. Where like generally, mid-range happens slowly and, they kind of develop themselves and they were able to beat find that sweet spot where they can beat aggro decks and beat control decks. But it happened super fast because like the top, couple decks were all like the, mid-range, aggro mid-range style. So like the junk mid-range deck that was 2 was, I thought, one of the better decks in the tournament.
Yeah, it looked very impressive.
It's very similar to like a Jund style deck. He's playing good creatures and a pile of removal. And, that pretty much was it. Mana base is a little tough. That's definitely the drawback from playing 3 colors in this current standard format. Is you have to play 1 million tap lands and 1 million shock lands.
Yep.
But you do get to play, obviously the best cards.
Then we went over to Milwaukee, which was won by Green-Red Monsters.
Yes, so this is a deck we saw in the first week, and then it definitely seems like it's going to be, a deck in the format. Might not be, number 1 tier, but it's definitely decent. I think the best list hasn't really come out yet. I think there's a lot of room for variety there if you want to go like, heavy one color and like run like Nykthos, or you can just play like a nice even split and run, just basically just straight ramp deck, similar to like the Kibler style deck from last standard.
Yes.
So it's kind of like 2 kind of versions of the deck you can make.
Yeah, so like the metagame with their standard is shaping up. The way you can look at it is you take like the first, month's worth of tournaments, whatever deck won, that archetype you plan for, or you assume to play against. It does, obviously not an exact list, or it might be a little bit faster green-white versus a little less mid-rangey, but it's still a green-white creature attacking.
Yeah, I expect to hit these similar cards, Smiter and Boon Satyr and
So you're looking at mono red variants, green-red decks, green-red aggressive decks, creature decks, and then green-white creature decks. And because of the popularity of Esper in week 1, you can always plan for that.
Yeah, people will play Esper, or blue-white. Like it's gonna happen.
We'll play Esper and blue-white till formats. Every format from now until eternity. There will always be some form of control in those colors.
Yeah, and Supreme Verdict is a card. Like the card is still very good.
And this week reflects all of that. You've got green-red at first, mono-red at second, and Esper at third, and you've even got 2 green-white lists in there as well.
Yep.
So like there you go. But this is all before pre-Pro Tour.
Yeah, this one was going on at the exact same time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually,
this one was going on like at the same time. So a couple of those decks did kind of leak over. The people like were watching, the stream and like jumped on those decks right away and showed up at Star City. But most people didn't, and then were playing the decks they wanted to play.
Yep.
But the Pro Tour definitely shook things up. But we'll hit that after we hit the Legacy.
Yeah, so Legacy also happened that weekend, and it was won by Sneak and Show.
Yeah, so it's a deck we know. It's an archetype that's, you're going to hit if you go into a Legacy tournament. You need to be able to beat, turn 1, turn 2 Emrakul. Like, you're not even playing for that.
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
The top 8 looks pretty diverse, honestly, but it is a lot of combo. There's just like varying types of combos.
Yeah, I think the 2 like interesting decks to note is the Oops All Spells at second, and then the Explorer Pod deck. I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
like Birthing Pod and Legacy is not that prevalent, and the deck did pretty well.
Yep.
And I think the deck's actually pretty interesting.
Right. But now.
So now we go to the Pro Tour, which generally happens in the Pro Tour. I mean, you get the best people in the game, like trying to blow up a format, and this is still very brand new format. So it was basically ripe for the picking.
Right. So like I said at the beginning, people were a little unhappy because it looked kind of stale-ish, like looked very much like the old. And like you said, at most Pro Tours, like they just cracked the egg.
Yeah.
They broke it wide open.
Yeah. So we got like all kinds of new decks. I mean, like Nykthos and Devotion in general was like basically the thing.
Nykthos was the card of the weekend. I'm surprised it didn't get picked up sooner. That Nykthos was like really good, but it did get picked up by the pros on the Pro Tour.
Yeah, it just can allow for these like broken turns where you just like explode with mana and just casting a ton of things, way ahead of curve.
Yeah, so now at this point you've got everything, every color being represented in a monocolored deck, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
By Nykthos, with the exception of white.
Yeah, white's the only one that kind of like...
Which I think which doesn't sound too badly, because pumping all that Nykthos mana into Heliod activations...
No, yeah, it's simply not. I mean, I've seen some control lists that are using Nykthos, but they didn't do it as well at this tournament.
And you still get Spear, and there's nothing wrong with Spear, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might make that a deck out.
Yeah, so the mono blue devotion deck, which some ran Nykthos and some didn't. Some were just islands and mutavaults. There was kind of like the two teams really that brought the deck, the French team and the Star City team.
Yeah, and the people who did play the Nykthos usually didn't play that many.
Right. Yeah, it was like one. But it clearly was the best deck of the weekend. I don't know if it's necessarily the best deck in the format. I don't think it is. I think it can fall apart. It's just very much like a synergistic deck. It's not like each card is inherently powerful. It's much more like this building thing, and then you just get this critical mass of like power, and you hit this like huge Master of Waves or something, and then you win the game.
Yeah, Master of Waves is definitely very big this weekend.
But the like individual creatures like Judge's Familiar and that kind of stuff are very weak and easy to beat by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously that's what won the Pro Tour was Mono Blue Devotion, which we're talking about by Dasani.
Yep.
French team. But the Mono Black deck looked pretty interesting with Veribos and Grey Merchant and just all this like life loss, like drain you a bunch of times repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
The black-white deck I thought looked really good. I thought it was actually had a decent matchup against most of the decks in the top 8 with all its removal.
Yeah.
But the blue deck was able to just kind of value it out and crush it.
Right. Yeah, the blue deck I think is like really sweet. It's very fishy.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
And it's like all about the facet. Like you said, the creatures are very mediocre on their own.
Yeah.
But like when you combine them together, it's very Voltron-esque.
Yeah.
Where like suddenly you turn your facet on, you like can Nykthos for a ton of mana and make your whole team unblockable and just kill them.
Right.
Or like Master of Waves for like 6 tokens.
Yeah.
And have like a ton of damage on board.
And then play a Bident and like draw 5.
Yeah, that's the card that I thought was like most ridiculous. Like people were playing Bident and like it was really good.
Yeah, it's gross in this deck because you have so many guys that are low mana cost, so you can get a bunch of guys on board.
You get more value out of your little
A lot of them have flying,
Yeah.
So you can connect and draw, multiple cards. And when you're drawing, multiple cards, it's just ridiculous.
Right.
So yeah, I mean it's definitely a deck to watch. We'll see if it's good enough to stay on top. I have my doubts.
I also agree. This is a deck that doesn't do as that well against Supreme Verdict.
Yeah.
Which it will definitely see a big like influx of those.
Yeah.
But it's one of those decks that like people are gonna be playing all the time.
Yeah.
It's never really gonna go away. And it'll win a couple more tournaments and it will pop up here and there and it'll make the metagame react a little bit to it.
Right.
But it's never gonna be like the best deck, which Standard shouldn't have a best deck.
Right. I did like Wafatapo's list for his Esper.
Yeah, Wafatapo stuck with his guns and played Esper.
Yeah, and I think his list was like really, really good.
So you know how I said Shaheen Sarani doesn't like Ashiok?
No Ashioks.
Neither did Wafatapo.
Yeah.
He didn't like Ashiok either.
Although Christian Calcano played Ashiok.
Is he in the top 8?
He almost was.
Well, almost only counts in horseshoes.
Yeah.
But he still did way better than either of us did because we weren't qualified for the Pro Tour.
We didn't even leave the couch.
We didn't even did not leave the couch. That's correct.
What do you think of that deck?
The Mahara red green monsters dudes deck.
Yeah,
I think it's awesome.
The deck is capable of like ridiculous starts. If you can go find it, pull up the Twitter picture that Brian Killer posted while he was facing him. It's turn 3, and he has like a million things on the board. It's pretty insane. The only problem I see with this deck is because it's running so much ramp with like the Voiding Satyrs and the Elvish Mystics and the Sylvan Caryatids. Like it's just a ton of ramp, and then you can have these draws where all you have is ramp guys.
Right.
And like no fat to pump into.
Right. Well, like Garrick and Domri help a lot with that.
Yeah. I mean, even, playing a bunch of guys off of that. And then it definitely is a deck that is using Nylea pretty well, I feel.
Yes.
Because, like, Arbor Colossus is like, really big for his mana cost, especially once you monstrous him.
Mm-hmm.
But he is just a 9/9. So, like, the fact that Nylea grants trample on him is really, really huge.
That's true. Yep.
Same with Polar Kranos. Doesn't have trample, but the fact that Nylea grants trample and can then dump in the Nykthos mana.
Yeah, I'm
into
glad.
A bunch of pumps.
I'm glad she's seeing a little bit of play because I don't think she's very good, and I want her to be good. I don't want I'd never want bad cards.
Yeah, honestly, none of the gods actually looked that good before this weekend. But like after this weekend, now you can see like, oh, you can build a deck around the gods.
It's really
pretty
Nykthos that's like pulling the strings.
I think so. I mean, clearly he agrees because he's running 4 copies of Nykthos in his
Right,
deck
and
of a legendary land.
Yeah, and then I'm sure it was disgusting every time he had it.
Yeah, I do think the new legendary rule like really helps it. We can just like Nykthos, add mana, play second Nykthos, add mana off the first,
Right.
Just go nuts.
Plus the Voyaging Satyrs to untap the Nykthos.
Nykthos, yeah, double Nykthos in a turn.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Pretty good. So the Paul Rietzel and Patrick Chapin both played like very similar lists with it's a black-white deck, which I mentioned before, but it's almost like slightly schizophrenic because it has like this aggressive start and then it has this like very mid-range start.
Well, they kind of have, like, I know you're talking about the Soldiers of the Pantheon.
Yeah.
They kind of had to have those.
Yeah, they just needed somebody.
They needed something in that slot, and, they weren't just going to jam more 5-drops.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Soldiers did fine,
Yeah.
He definitely killed plenty of people, and the pro multicolor was very relevant in multiple situations.
What do you think of the 4 Thoughtseize they played main deck?
It worked out for them. Well, I care more about the 4 Thoughtseizes 3 Read the Bones.
Okay.
I think a lot of the people weren't expecting as much mono red, and they felt comfortable in the matchup.
Yeah.
And if you're not planning on playing against mono red, I'm totally fine with.
Yeah, I thought Season Read the Bones is awesome if you're not going to play against red. It's just that the red matchup is the one matchup where you're like... Ugh.
Yeah, but I mean, they're also playing Blood Barons and...
Obsidat, yeah.
Obsidat and Precinct Captain, which is like a house.
And Whip.
Yeah, and Whip.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, Whip is pretty good.
Yeah. And Elspeth, which, if you get to 6 mana, they're not winning.
Well, if you get to 6 mana, they've probably already lost anyway. Yeah.
And there's the mono red devotion deck as well.
Yeah, there was also the mono red devotion.
Perforos.
Who I think is the bee's knees.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Perforos.
So the nice thing is basically now we know the format is pretty much wide open again. Like there's still a ton of room for innovation. Like so you don't have to sit back and like, oh, I can only play these 2 decks, 3 decks, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a ton of innovation now that these decks have now shook up the metagame.
Shut up, you.
Yeah, shook up the metagame like so intensely, and like all these cards that were low, even money wise, because not many people were playing with them now are skyrocketing and seeing going to see a lot more play.
Yeah.
So now you're going to see another shift of we don't know what It's kind of like nice to see. Oh, now we have to beat these mono decks with what?
It's like the first couple weeks, Theros was like, you guys can do better. You guys can do better. And then this comes around and Theros is like, yeah, now you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like
This was like the first real influx of Theros cards.
yeah, it took a second for us to like realize that a new set of Magic came out.
Yeah, because it was like, oh, put like a couple Theros cards in my deck.
Yeah, now we're like totally taking the
Building.
mechanics out of Theros, and of which Devotion is a very good one.
So that's basically where we're at right now.
Yep. You guys are pretty much caught up on what's going on. Have plans for all the monocolored Devotion decks. I would say you're going to play against mono blue the most,
Probably.
but then against mono black, I think, more than mono red.
Maybe. I don't know. I think it's
I
close.
think the black's pretty popular just amongst people
close.
in general.
Well, I mean, mono black's always been pretty popular.
Well, now that we got a mono black deck that top 8'd,
Yeah.
that isn't bad.
No.
So everyone's like, I want to play mono black, finally.
Yeah.
So I would just be expecting to play against mono black.
The nice thing I do think about the mono black deck is, the control decks are still playing Doomblades.
Yeah.
Which you're like, yeah, I love your Doomblades against all my black creatures. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Definitely.
I have seen some control decks start to run some ultimate prices though.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Which, I think you'll...
Which definitely makes a lot better all these monocolored Devotion.
Yeah. If everybody's playing monocolor, ultimate price becomes fantastic.
Very, very fantastic.
Of course, then everybody's going to just like switch back to Luxton Smiters and stuff like that. But
yeah.
That's the metagame.
That's the metagame. So go out, tune your decks, play tournaments.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think about Theros and the decks that it has created.
Thanks. See ya.
Thanks for watching. Mohawk.